Hi everyone, welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles podcast, a podcast for keyboard players, obviously. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm pumped as always to be here with you. And I'm always thrilled to have my mate Paul Bindig here by my side. How are you, sir? Happy Australia Day long weekend?
Yeah, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here and always thrilled to be working with you. And thanks for calling me your mate because you're my mate too. And what more appropriate thing to say, as you said, during our Australia Day long weekend?
Absolutely. So, and we are going to the other side of the world for this interview with Mr. Mark Shusterman. What an amazing keyboard player Mark is, amongst also being a great backing vocalist and tambourine player, as we talk about in the episode. So, Mark is the go-to man with Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, an amazing outfit I've loved since sort of the mid 2010s. Just love their music, Paul. How about you?
Yeah, the same. I'm a bit newer to them than you are, but they're a great band, and you'll hear me say this during the interview a little bit, folks. Just please do yourself a favour and check them out. They have a little bit hard to describe their musical style because they genre hop a little bit, but if I said it was soul, bluesy, rootsy, Americana type music, that kind of gives you a feel. But they've got a great punchy sound and have had a couple of real big hits, which we discuss during the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this interview with Mark, and we'll see you after the show. Mark, absolute pleasure to have you here, and thank you for giving up a precious Friday night when you're not out playing.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks, David and Paul. Thanks for having me. Happy to do it.
No, really appreciate it. So we'll start off just with your earlier years. Just tell us a little bit about how Mark Shusterman came to be the musician he is today. What were your earlier years in music?
Sure. I started playing piano at 5 years old. I'm the son of Soviet immigrants, and so they had me started in lessons young playing classical piano. I didn't love it. I liked it. I was happy to do it, but by the time I turned about 15, 16, I just wanted to play rock and roll, and I wanted to play guitar, and I wanted to be in bands, and the classical music just wasn't cutting it for me anymore. And so I moved on to guitar for a while. I've been in bands since, I was 15 years old. I was in bands playing piano, and then eventually guitar and writing songs from a young age. And I think I must have been like 23, 22, 23. Started realizing, I could be in bands playing keyboards, and I just have to unlearn a lot of the classical stuff to get there, and started being in bands at that point. And I was in bands in Denver starting from when I was 21, 22 years old, and eventually meeting Nathaniel Rateliff and his band. So,
no, absolutely. So before we get on to that, Mark, you've made a fascinating point about you had to unlearn stuff. So just going from, say, those high school years to early adulthood, what do you feel you needed to unlearn when you joined those bands?
Yeah, it's just rock and roll is just an entirely different kind of playing, and it's something that is rooted in a lot of, like, the rock and roll legends at piano and keyboards were all self-taught. And so you learn your own style that way, get off of the page. I did a lot of reading music, had to get off of that and start to learn chord inversions and the ways that just make playing easier, and what is the way that I would play if I was just, if I didn't know the instrument, start from scratch, basically, at that point.
Yeah, no, great. And so some of those early bands, what sort of styles of music were you playing? Sort of just general rock stuff, or?
Yeah, the first band that I joined when I moved to Denver in my early adulthood was called Constellations. And it was a bit of a post-punk band, electronic. I was heavily in electronic music at that point, and I was playing Rhodes and a computer and making a lot of like atmospheric sounds, music like that. And then right after that band dismantled, I played in a few other bands, started playing some folk and rock and roll bands, and then joined a band called the Blue Rider. Started a band called the Blue Rider with my close friends that I still play in today. That I'm gonna play a show with in like a week from now. So yeah.
So in those early years, Mark, when you were first starting to get into playing in rock and roll bands, and you mentioned just then playing a Rhodes and using a computer, what other keyboards were you able to acquire to obviously be portable and take out and play this kind of music?
Yeah, it was funny. When I went to college for music. I dropped out after a year, but I was in for composition, and I had like a digital Roland piano, and I hated it, but it kind of covered all the bases. So when I moved to Denver and wanted to join the bands, I went to like Gravity Music, which is like a local music shop, and traded it in. And they happened to have a Rhodes there. And at that point gave me like $500 credit that swapped for the Rhodes, which, I mean, at this point, Rhodes prices are insane. But yeah, I got this Rhodes and a Roland Space Echo like the same day. And that was basically my sound, was a Rhodes through a Roland Space Echo in the two bands I was in. Otherwise, it was small little synthesizers, small little like noise makers and things like that that I was playing. But it was that Rhodes right behind me that was the one I played back then and still haven't played.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, obviously, you mentioned Nathaniel Rateliff, and so you guys from memory go way back. You're friends, I believe, before you even got into music. But just and for our listeners and viewers, I think 99% will be aware of this band and Nathaniel's work. But I just want to emphasize, if you haven't, do go and check it out, because this man you see before you is an absolute maniac, and I mean that in the most positive way possible. This man's energy is incredible on stage, and he's also one of the meanest tambourine players I've ever seen, let alone his backing vocals. So, Mark, tell us about, though, before we get into that and what you've gotten to today. Just what were those early years, and how did you guys pull things together?
Nathaniel's oldest friend, and like his friend from childhood, is Joseph Pope, who plays the bass. But when Nathaniel moved to Denver, he kind of got straight into the music scene, him and Joe. And all of us, everyone that's kind of in the core band of the Night Sweats, Luke, Patrick, myself, and Joseph and Nathaniel, we all basically lived within a few blocks of each other, all played at this venue in town called the High Dive, a small little 200-person club. And yeah, I knew Nathaniel from like those early days. Our bands would open up for each other or just play bills together. He was kind of that guy who played, really soulful, Leonard Cohen-y. Like his early work is really beautiful, really amazing. But he was also so down because he had made a go at it, been on record labels, and like nothing was catching. So yeah, the story of the first time he brought up Night Sweats to me was actually I was playing a house party in the neighborhood in my band, the Blue Rider, which is a bit of like a psych rock, freaky 60s style rock and roll. And he came out to the show and was basically like, hey, I've got this new project I'm going to try and work on. And I need a rock and roll keyboard player, because to that point he had James Hahn, who's an incredible pianist, but was not really versed in rock and roll. And he wanted an organ player, and I was playing combo organ in that band. And I was like, sure, yeah, I'm down to check it out. At that point, I'm still juggling cooking at a restaurant. That's what I was doing at the time, playing gigs at night, and he sent me 3 or 4 songs. I think it was like Need Never Get Old, Look at Here, Howlin' at the Moon, and all just demos in his attic. And they were like crazy great. Like the way he makes demos, it's like a shame that we even make records, because his demos are so cool. But I yeah, I heard those songs. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Whenever you want to get together and practice, I'm in. So that's how that started.
That's great. And so those early years of, I mean, you guys worked hard, and I'm not exactly sure of the timelines before you saw the success you have now. But what were those early years like as far as finding your way as a band together?
Yeah, the whole order of things was basically when I joined the band. I joined for Night Sweats, but he still had a contract for his solo record, Falling Faster. He had a few tours he was going to do, and so I joined on, and I basically played those first. My first tours with him were doing that stuff, and it was bare bones. We were in a van with just the few of us, Joe and Pat, and Joseph's wife, Julie Davis, and she was pregnant at the time. It was, a wild time. We did those 2 or 3 tours, or maybe even more than that. It was probably a couple of years of that. And then the Night Sweats record came out, what would that be, 2015, I think. And it's very clear for me because I got married on August 22nd. The record came out on August 21st. I asked our manager at the time where, we were very busy, but like it wasn't crazy. I was like, hey, is August 22nd okay? He was like, sure. Got nothing going on. And then it turned out, oh, well, the record's coming out August 21st. And then, oh, well, SOB suddenly became this massive thing.
Yeah.
And so we played Fallon like, a week and a half before my wedding or whatever. And, it was just crazy from that point on, which would have been, 2015. It's just been nonstop.
So Mark, tell us from your perspective, how did things change for you and for your colleagues in the band with going from, working hard, eking things out, and then, as you said, SOB blew up.
Yeah.
Suddenly you guys are really popular. What did you learn from that, and what did that change for you and your friends?
I mean, so many things. We played so many shows, and I just can't understate how important that is for just being a great band. We played however many 100 shows a year for several years, and including sound checks and all the promotion we were doing, the radio shows and all that. We just got really, really tight and really, really became close as a band. Because that first record, he made essentially by himself. He went out with Richard Swift and made that record with the help of Patrick Meese, who plays the drums. And we were all just kind of the band to support that. And then after that initial run and we started playing that much, it just became clear we're going to be better off recording as a band, writing as a band, kind of working this all out as a band. And we got really tight. We got, it just became real, and it still doesn't feel real. However many 10 years later that we're still doing this, it still is surprising and incredible that we get to do it. But yeah, we were all so fortunate to get to do it, and we all wanted to push harder and harder to keep it going. So yeah, that's probably what I've learned.
Yeah, amazing. And I was just thinking, reflecting on the way that these records come together, and you sort of said initially it was probably a lot of Nathaniel's own work effort, but now it's more of a collaborative. I just have to ask a question, and this is purely based on the video clip for I Need Never Get Old.
Yeah.
So obviously a very humorous clip. And for those who haven't seen it, I won't give it away too much. Just watch it. But imagine a bunch of musicians spending a long time in the studio, getting increasingly frustrated. Is Nathaniel a perfectionist, or is this just a bit of a fun theme for the video?
It's interesting. I would say he is a perfectionist, but we work fast in the studio. Things are not long. Nathaniel is, I mean, he's got an incredible voice, but what you don't see is that a lot of those takes for the records are first or second vocal take. he's not the kind of guy to keep running a vocal take until he feels good and then splicing vocal takes together. He really gets in there and does those takes first take, which is insane. For me, when I work on my music, that's the thing I always get hung up on is the vocals. And for him, it just comes so easily. So yeah, our studio time is generally like the most time is the creative writing, but once we start tracking, it's fast.
Yeah, you're quite productive.
Yeah. So you are doing some, and not unusually, you're doing some of the composition in the studio. So how do you approach that as a band? Obviously, Nathaniel, I'm assuming, has, the demos, as you mentioned, that are high quality anyway. What
Right.
do you guys add aside from the obvious from a composition or collaborative viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, more and more, our voices are kind of involved in what the sound is, which I'm loving to hear, my fellow bandmates, what they've got to say. And, there's some arrangement stuff that happens in the studio and some just movement kind of stuff going on. But for the most part, he's writing a lot of the songs. I've written a couple, but it's mostly him bringing them to the table, and then we flesh them out. Because generally his demo, he's a great drummer. That was his first instrument. So he comes in with a great drum take and then a vocal and guitar or piano. He plays a good amount of piano on the songs, or writes on piano. And that's his demo. And we usually start from scratch from there. He'll bring the song and then we start jamming it out, kind of feeling what feels good for us as a band. And then it comes together that way.
Great. Yeah. And look, I've been a fan of the band since pretty much the start, and but let's use Farm Aid 2023 as an example of you guys playing live, and that was an amazing show.
Oh, cool.
When I mention you're a maniac on the tambourine, that essentially comes from watching those videos. And but tell us about your keyboard rig and just because you've got this amazing, what I'm assuming, I don't know that it's a B3, but you've got some sort of organ that's got this beautiful transparent background and then Kronos on top. Just tell us broadly about the sounds you need to have to play with the Night Sweats and how you approach that.
Sure. So when I first started with the Night Sweats, it was, I was playing a Wurlitzer with a Nord on top emulating organ. And since the get-go, it's always been a piano and organ world for me. So I play that Hammond B3. It's like a 56 or something. And then I have a piano, which is a CP80. It's basically the upright version of the CP70s. But I've gone through a good amount of pianos on stage. It's, a piano is tricky to play on stage, and we're still figuring it out. But I like where we're at right now. And then I have the Kronos and a Mellotron.
Nice.
Yeah, so the Kronos is basically there to cover things like clavinet, to cover the piano if it breaks, to cover the organ if it breaks, or, the organ has been very trusty. I've never had any problems with it, which is incredible. Yeah, it covers those kinds of sounds. And on the Future, that record, we went more into like synthesizers, clavinets, and those kinds of sounds. So I need it for that. Maybe there's a day where I'm playing all the real instruments on stage, but I also don't want to look gaudy and absurd on stage with, stacks and stacks. So,
because as a general rule, Mark, you don't need to cover brass, which is a nice thing.
Right. Yeah. There's no covering brass. So it's really just sticking to the keyboard world. And I haven't found a reliable enough clavinet to have a clavinet on stage. So
yeah,
maybe one day.
And one thing I want to call out is your own amazing voice, because the other thing that becomes apparent when you watch the live shows is just how critical the harmonies are in a lot of the songs. Yeah. And you seem to be, one of the two people that are doing a lot of the primary harmonies. Amazing. Did that require a lot of development from you, or you've done a lot of singing over the years anyway?
Yeah, I've always done a lot of singing, and I grew up singing in choirs and things like that, so I have a natural sense for harmony. But over the last 5 years or so, Nathaniel and I have really taken it seriously, and he's been pushing me really hard on it, and I've been feeling really great about the way that our harmonies are sounding. It's a unique thing. I don't think there's a lot of bands that are doing harmonies in that style anymore. Two blaring male vocalists going. And so we're just kind of trying to do that constantly. So I'm singing probably 90% of the set with him, just as a harmony vocal. And it's one of my favorite parts of being in the band, if not my favorite part. So
Great. And just, you mentioned, Nathaniel, pushing you hard on that. I get the impression, and I mean this in the most positive way possible, and one of your co-headliners at Farm Aid, Mellencamp, like we had Troy Kinnett on recently, and he relayed the same thing. Hard bandmasters bring out the best. Do you find that Nathaniel's, even though you may be old friends, he's a hard taskmaster in wanting quality, and that brings out the best?
Yeah, no doubt about it. He has an incredible ear. He's constantly hearing everything. Things that we think that are not necessarily all that important, he will get completely hung up on and drill us on it until they're completely perfect. And, down to, for me, it's the inflections and the cadence of my voice is matching him 100% of the time, which was really tough and rewarding on the latest tour we did was on his solo record, the Still Alright record, which was a lot quieter and a lot more space for those vocals. And it was, every syllable needed to be moving in sync with him. And we got there, and I think it's made me better since then, even, on the harmonies.
Great. And that's evident even in your solo work, Mark, and I want to just briefly cover that as well. So your most recent release, I believe anyways, Electric Eyes, brilliant song, very different style in a lot of ways. Tell us about the itch that the solo stuff scratches for you.
I'm constantly working on something, whether it's music or not. And I have some collaborators in Denver that I've had since I was 20 years old. Scott Beck is the drummer in my band, The Blue Rider, and on those songs. And he's always pushing me like, "Hey, you're in town. Let's work on stuff." But yeah, Electric Eyes came to me super quick at home, along with the other 3 songs on that EP. And we actually went out and recorded 10 songs over at with my friend Mike Novak at Chicago Electric Piano Company, and we'll probably put the other 6 out at some point too. But yeah, those first 4, I gotta keep doing. I can't stop myself. So
you mentioned that you work on music and other things as well. Am I right in saying you've recently had an art exhibition?
Yeah, I've recently gotten into, on the road especially, in any downtime, I'm doing a lot of drawing.
Yeah.
And I was just encouraged by a gallery owning friend of mine to have a show, and it was great. And I've been doing a lot of drawing. I do a lot of cooking because that's what I kind of started with, and music. It's anything that keeps me moving in the creative world, I'm just going to do. So. Yeah.
I imagine that time doing the art and the drawing just gives you a nice bit of solitude in a different creative way when you're out on tour and the hectic work. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's been saving me in the last few years. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Mark, tell us about your relationship with music production, with your own work and collaborating with others. How do you approach that? How did you get into that? And what are you working on now?
I've only somewhat recently gotten into music production. I did make electronic music just myself on a laptop, even in my early 20s and things. But starting to take it seriously was basically the pandemic. I had plans to build this studio, and they were, it was like a 5-year plan, and then that happened, and I was just like, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. So I made myself a little creative space to work on these things, and I've done a couple things for like Nathaniel or for Night Sweats out of my home studio. Some of the Electric Eye stuff after finishing in Chicago, came back here and finished them up in my studio, and a single by the Blue Rider I did in this space. So I'm starting to get the hang of it, and for me, the hardest part is the engineering part of it. I don't have that brain, and when I get down the creative path and I start moving cables around, it becomes a disaster, and then we're screwed. Yeah. That's my relationship to production.
That's great.
Yeah, well, I guess it's another avenue of creativity, but it's just from a different perspective at the end of the day. And I suppose it's probably like when you're learning the chord inversions. It's exploring and flexing that muscle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So can you share with us? You've mentioned a number of the pieces of gear that you use, but I'm really interested in, over the time, what have been your favourite keyboards that you've worked with? I'm guessing one of them is the Rhodes that's sitting behind you in there. But what have been some of your favourite pieces to work with? Maybe on stage, but also in the studio. Yeah.
Well, looking through my studio right now, I've got a Mellotron that I'm in love with. It really, especially for the production end of things, it's just such a clutch instrument. It's beautiful. It's unique. It sounds great. And there's so much to learn on it. I play this Yamaha YC20 combo organ in the Blue Rider, so a bit more aggressive, like organ. I have a Vox Continental in here that I really like. Love my Wurlitzer. Is one of my favorite, just things to sit down and play. I also have just an Yamaha upright in the house that I probably play more than anything else. And then there's synthesizer world back here with a Poly 6 and a Juno. Yeah, a Pro 3. I've been loving just getting keyboards and playing them, and with no specific vision on it. I make a lot of electronic music really for my own consumption. Maybe at some point we'll put it out, but for now it's been, building up a library of just fun experiments. Yeah, and then I've got in this space, have an old drum kit that I love, and I also love to play the bass. I love to write on bass, so there's a lot of stuff that happens on bass in here too.
Why does that work for you, Mark? The writing on the bass. What does that do for you that maybe writing on a keyboard doesn't?
I think it's the simplicity of it, and it's that it really, at the end of the day, it is all you really need in order to put a melody over. It's your root, and it can be your percussion. And so you can sit and just do that and really not do too much thinking about, what inversion is this going to be? What movement is this going to be? I like to write a lot of instrumental music on piano, but I find that I'll get lost in the arrangement. Whereas when I'm writing a song, Electric Eyes was absolutely a bass song. And the other song on that record that's more of a traditional song, then there's 2 instrumentals, which I wrote on keys. But, the bass allows for me to just get to the core of what makes the song.
Given the diversity of your approach, as you said, you don't mind playing a bit of drums, playing a bit of bass, the keyboard background, singing, tambourine. Tell us, if you had to give any advice to someone starting out in the industry today, and as you know, the industry changes year by year, but just what would be those tips you'd pass on to someone starting out to avoid some maybe pitfalls you encountered?
Best thing that I bring is an easygoing attitude and not, I'm a good player, but I'm not good enough to be an asshole. I'm not good enough to say, no, I'm going to do it my way. So for the most part, when I'm working with anyone, if they want it differently than what I'm playing, I'm happy to oblige. And, maybe eventually I'll be a little bit more strict about what it is that I do. But I think that attitude, the easygoing attitude, that nothing in this industry, I feel like nothing beats a good vibe. And it's why there are players who are not the best players that are in great bands. And there are incredible players that are out of work because they're hard to work with. So, being easy to work with is a big thing. I think it's like a Malcolm Gladwell quote that really stuck with me. That was like, you have to succeed, you have to be on time, great at what you do, and friendly, I think were the three. And he was like, and you don't have to be all three. You can just be two of those, And I feel like and you can be a combination of them, but you have to be, being punctual, being a good hang, and then ideally you're also good at playing.
Absolutely. No, you're right. It's definitely about the hang.
Yeah.
And on a very different topic, we love asking our guests about train wreck moments. So is there some train wreck moment over recent years, Mark, where something's gone spectacularly wrong that you can, if not look back and laugh, at least not grimace?
Yeah, there's a pretty good one. When you brought up Farm Aid, made me think of it. But Farm Aid, I don't even know the year. I'm going to just throw it out there and say 2018. We'll see. I'm sure it's out there online. We were playing, and I was playing a Helpenstiel at the time, which is sort of a piano that can be folded out into itself, but it is like a full upright piano. And I had a great technician at the time, Kenny Stahl, and he, happened to be that the way he set it up that day, and the Farm Aid is an insane festival. The way that it's regimented, it's like 7-minute changeovers. Everyone's playing for like 34 minutes, and it runs like clockwork. And so I think it was maybe just a quick change, whatever happened, it wasn't stabilized quite right. In the middle of a tune, I'm up there, and it's one that I'm just banging on the piano, and it just starts like going and just fell. And I'm on a riser, and this is an upright piano, fell off of the riser, like onto a mic stand, put a hole in the back of it. It was unreal. And then it just like completely frozen. Like I'll switch over here, but there's a piano on the ground. Like, I don't know what's going to happen here, what's going to happen on the next song. Totally like a nightmare of a situation. And I'm just going to tell the whole story because Kenny would be happy to have me tell the whole story. We say it's a curse that Kenny brought upon himself because we had played a festival like a couple days before that, and Jackson Browne just happened to be side stage. He was playing festival too, and was just watching our set side stage, and came up to Kenny, who was also side stage, like watching my gear and very focused. And he taps Kenny on the shoulder and is like, "Hey, what's that keyboard he's playing over there?" When I was playing the Helpenstiel. And Kenny like pulls out his in-ears and like looks at him, kind of gives him a nasty look because he thinks he's just some roadie. And he's like, "It's a Helpenstiel," and then like puts the thing back in. And our tour manager was like, "Hey, what'd you and Jackson Browne talk about?" Kenny was like, "Oh my God." And like 2 days later, the Helpy fell off the riser. And he wrote the roadie, and we just, pulling it all together, I think, it was Kenny's fault.
The wrath of Jackson Browne. Don't take him on. Don't take him on. No, that's amazing, Mark. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you got it.
So, Mark, one of the questions we ask all our guests is, could you tag a keyboard player for us? In other words, who is someone that you would love to learn more about as a keyboard player, and maybe someone that would be great to be interviewed on this show?
Oh, wow. That's a great idea. I might not be getting her last name. We just played a show with Mount Joy. We played like a big arena show, and they have a great keyboard player named Jacqueline McLeod, I think.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
She's awesome and would be a great guest.
Great pick. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, Mark, the fun one that all our guests love to bits, the Desert Island Discs question. So 5 albums, if you had to take them, what would they be?
That's a crazy question to just pick 5 albums. And I was thinking about it today because you mentioned it. And I'll just have to pick the ones that, I keep going back to and have been with me since forever. So I'm going to say Maggot Brain by Funkadelic, Yoshimi Battles Pink Robots by the Flaming Lips, Music for 18 Musicians by Steve Reich.
Yeah.
Aphex Twins Drukqs. And for my final answer, I'll go with Outkast, Aquemini. Those are my 5
picks.
Amazing. Thank you, and we'll link to all of those in the show notes and add them to our list for all our viewers and listeners. So thank you so much, Mark. In the last few months, the What If I EP has been released by the Night Sweats and Nathaniel Rateliff. Really recommend for our viewers and listeners, check it out. There's just such a great variety of musical styles on there and very keyboard heavy, so we can really hear Mark going to work there, and it sounds great. I'm interested in what's next. What are you working on at the moment? What can we look forward to hearing from yourself, maybe also from Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats?
Yeah, I want to mention I felt very lucky on that EP. The By My Round song I did get to write also, or it was a song that I had written, and Nathaniel really.
That is a great song. You wrote that. That's excellent. Yeah, I know. I didn't know this before you said it, but that's actually my favourite track on that EP. Yeah, so
that means a lot. Yeah, it
really
was. I felt very very honored that he. It was just a song that I had been playing like at sound checks and stuff, and he was like, "We should record this one." So. I feel very lucky that he did it, and his voice is incredible on it. So, What If I EP was great. And also Phil Cook plays keyboards on the What If I remix or reversion. And he is an absolutely incredible pianist. Also, maybe a suggestion for you. He was my piano teacher during COVID. I basically decided I wanted to kind of get back into learning a little thing or two, and he there's no better I don't know a better piano player. He has an incredible solo piano repertoire, a couple records, and he's been a part of a lot of great bands, but he's really something. Phil Cook. Anyhow, what is next? We've been recording. Night Sweats have been recording. We'll have something for everyone soon, I think is all that I should say.
That's fine.
But we've been working. We've been making music with our friend Brad Cook, who's Phil's brother, who produced the Future, or finished kind of producing the Future record. He worked with us on these new recordings, and more touring. We're gonna leave in a week and a half for Canada, and do Canada for the month of February with the City in Color. And then, we've got a European tour scheduled for the summertime, kind of a makeup tour for last summer it's kind of the only tour we've ever postponed. And we felt very badly about it, but we're excited to get back and to play these shows for people. So that'll be in the summertime, and more shows. It doesn't seem, it shows no signs of stopping. Seems like
it certainly doesn't, Mark. And I'm going to ask the obvious question. Apologies if you already have, but you need to be getting away from some of those winters to an Australian summer at some stage.
Yes, God, yes. What are we doing?
I know, tour, please.
We did do Australia fairly recently, but it was like a very short tour.
Okay.
It was a shame because we've done a longer tour of Australia that we loved. It's incredible down there.
I'm just thinking, did you do the Byron Bay Blues Fest? I'm just thinking you might have popped up that.
We played it last year, 2 years ago, and then we did it when we were first coming up too. So it was our second time doing it. Such a cool festival, and then just Melbourne and Sydney have such amazing venues. You know, every time we're there, we can play a couple of shows in Sydney, a couple of shows in Melbourne, and the people are great. Yeah, I love it down there. I hope we start doing that.
I feel like your style of music would really be very popular to a wider Australian audience.
It seems like it does. Yeah, it seems like it does well, and also some of my favorite bands are coming out of Australia right now, so that's also reason enough to come down there.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, everyone. That was the hosts making it all about themselves because we're Australian. So apologies to our wider audience. So we're coming towards the end of our time together, and thank you so much, Mark, for being so generous with your thoughts and your own time. As David said on a Friday night when you for once don't have to play. However, we can't let you leave without asking you the quick fire 10 questions. And They are very simply 10 very quick questions, 10 very quick answers, first thought that comes into your head. And I'll kick off with, what is the first album you ever heard?
First album I ever heard? Probably Abbey Road.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep. Most important ritual you do before a gig. How do you get settled for a gig, Mark?
I like to do a little breathing, little intentional breathing, whatever that's called, meditation or, intention, but some breathing.
Great. Now, I think we might know the answer to this, but we'll see. If you hadn't been a musician, what do you think your career choice would have been?
I would have definitely been a chef. I almost was.
There you go. I think I know the answer to this one as well. Transpose button or adjust on the fly? A bit hard with a B3.
Oh, yeah, adjust on the fly, always.
Nice. What's the favourite gig you've ever played?
Oh, God. It feels like it's Red Rocks every time we play it. That's our hometown show, and I think the best venue in the world. So that one. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And then favourite city if possible, and it definitely doesn't have to be an Australian city, just somewhere in the world that you've loved playing.
I love Amsterdam, playing the Paradiso in Amsterdam and just walking around the city for hours.
Which you can do in Amsterdam. It's a fascinating place, that's for sure. Yeah. Who's someone you'd love to play with that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Oh, God. I feel so lucky for all the people that we have gotten to play with. We're about to do some shows, I think, in the fall with My Morning Jacket. And they were like my favorite rock and roll band when I was a kid, when I was 20, 21. So that's, I'm going to get to do it, but we haven't done it yet. So
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Favorite music documentary or movie, Mark?
Probably Stop Making Sense.
Have you've seen the new 4K version?
I did. Yeah, we went and saw it in the theaters, but yeah, saw it early on too, and it's fresh on my mind. So that's
it's amazing.
Yeah, very cool, that one. What's one thing that you would love to see invented that would make your life as a keyboard player easier?
A good-looking MIDI controller, which we have met someone recently who is making some pretty stunning stuff. It's still in beta testing, but just something that looks good and can also, play MIDI sounds.
Yeah. No, valid. And then your favourite, I think I know the answer to this one too, Mark, but your favourite non-musical activity or hobby?
I'm going to say walking. Yeah. I love to walk. And when I'm on tour, I'm trying to walk most of the time. But yeah, when I'm at home, I love to cook and just be with my family.
Yeah, great. And look, I'm surprised you actually get walking in during the day, because the energy you put out on stage during a show, you're doing a few laps of walking just in any given show, which is absolutely amazing. And I think it's a testament to your capability, ability, and passion as a musician. Yeah. Just the energy comes and the audience appreciate it. So really cannot thank you enough for taking the time with us.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. This was very fun.
And there we have it. I hope you all enjoyed that a great deal. I know we did. And Paul, I've mentioned a couple of times in the interview about Mark's energy. I kill to see him live in person, and his enthusiasm for what he does is even evident in that interview.
Yeah, he's clearly passionate about what he does. He throws his whole self into it. And I think that translates in the live performances that we see on video. And do you think we convinced him enough to come to Australia? We really sold that hard, didn't we?
We did, summer. What else would you want? We've had sort of 80% humidity and nearly 40 degrees Celsius days. So what else would you want? So, it was a huge thanks to Mark for taking the time. We do appreciate it. And Paul, I believe we have another band T-shirt to pimp on our regular segment, Pimp Your Band T-shirts.
We sure do. So here I have a really cool cross design on this shirt. And, I've said this to you before, David, and we might play a game together. I always get these shirts and think, before I do any research, I wonder what sort of music this band plays. And I guessed it pretty well this time. So your turn. What
yeah,
sort of
look, any religious symbols, I tend to think metal. But, tell me.
You bang on. Well done. Great job. So this is Light in the Black. And that's their name, I hope.
Yep, there
Hopefully
we go.
that came across on camera when I turned around there. And put simply, Light in the Black are very devoted to all things Ronnie James Dio. And that goes through his career with Sabbath and his own solo work, and obviously Rainbow. So if you like your Dio and you are in the Edmonton area of Canada, Light in the Black, these are the guys to check out. Thank you for the shirt, and this will be donated to charity, like all the shirts we receive will.
And as always, if you're out there and in a band and would like to have your T-shirt pimped, do drop us a message via the website at keyboardchronicles.com or on our Facebook page and so on, and we'll definitely coordinate something with you. That'd be great.
Hey, David.
Yes.
What's that cool shirt you're wearing, though?
It's the one that I wore overnight and forgot to change this morning. So it's, I'll lean back. So that's one of our own Keyboard Chronicles. It's fancy you should ask that. It's one of our own Keyboard Chronicles pieces of merchandise. I will take the opportunity to say, look, it does help us keep afloat. And a huge thanks to those of you out there that have bought T-shirts and supported things. We actually have a fairly decent range of T-shirts and styles. It's all on our website at keyboardchronicles.com. You'll see there's a shop tab. Do click on that and you can have this studio art. There's a whole bunch of stuff. It really does help. And again, a huge thanks. We've had people from the UK, US, Canada buy this stuff, and even some from Australia. So it's lovely to see. So thank you.
Thank you everyone for your support who've purchased our merchandise, and we really appreciate it. I rarely make this speech, but I'll do it today because David's too humble to do it. But running this show, it's not for free. There's a little bit of a cost attributed to it, and all your support that we get via purchase of merch or our lovely Patreons, who we really appreciate, it just helps us keep the show going. It's as simple as that. It will always be free to access, but those little things just help us keep it running. And with one of those shirts, you can, and I know a lot of you listen to this, in fact, most of you listen to this audio only, but trust me, David looks very handsome in that shirt, and you can look equally handsome if you buy one.
Absolutely. And there are, for those not wanting, and I'm the same, like not necessarily wanting to buy something that has Keyboard Chronicles podcast on it, we do have a range of T-shirts that are just more synth, keyboard, organ and piano driven stuff that don't allude to the podcast. So and look, I do appreciate it. And although I'm running fine on one kidney, I can't afford to sell the last one. So, and what helps me prevent doing that is our wonderful Patreon supporters as well. So a big shout out to the musicplayer.com forums. Hugely appreciate their ongoing support. Tammy Catcher from Tammy's Musical Stew. Always appreciate Tammy's support. Thank you so much. Brother Paul Brown from the Water Boys and also the Brothers Brown. Amazing new album. Do check it out. I'm loving it. And Mike from midnightmastering.com. Love Mike's work. Always have, always will. And if you want some polish on your own creations, he's the man to talk to. So a huge thank you again to all of you out there for listening. We'll be back again in a week or two. As you might have noticed, our frequency of shows has increased because it's winter in the US and the UK, and we have lots of people keen to chat. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So hope we're not overwhelming you with shows, and we'll see you back in next time.